your little dashboard here. By putting the questions in the Q&A, it makes it easier for us to download them later and then send you a follow-up email with some of that information included. Alrighty, so we're going to give it 2 or so more minutes, and now is not too early to start asking questions if you have any in the Q&A panel. What we're going to have for you today is a bunch of different folks on the team and an alum here to tell you all about the college, and so all questions are fair game on all topics, whether it's academics, program structure, or finances. I'm happy to get them covered.
And for some context, I'm Dan Morse. I'm one of the instructors at the Product College. I teach a lot of our product development, communications, as well as the job search. And Jeremy is one of the founders of Make School, which was founded in 2012.
2012, so I've been at it for quite a while. So I think 5:01, we can officially get started.
Great.
So welcome everyone. And this is the Product College Info Session. We're going to be introducing to you what the college is all about, and then having you talk to an alum of the program to talk about the student experience, and talk to an enrollment advisor to discuss what the admissions process is like, what we look for in applicants, and what it's like to actually enroll and come to the Product College. To start from the very top, the Product College is a residential...
Ooh, we're actually going to do some polls and questions just to get a sense of the audience.
All right, Dan.
And I want to say, Sarah Johnson, thank you for sending this question. We're going to give 3 different opportunities. We're going to pause kind of at natural breaks and topics for you to answer the question. So
we're on it.
So to get started, I'm sure that everybody's coming from a lot of different places and has a lot of different interests. And so in order to cater our answers to you, we're going to do a quick little poll. So everyone should see on their screen a poll pop up right about now. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple things. The first is, where are you from? Are you from the East Coast, West Coast, South, Midwest, international? What part of the country, or maybe not the United States, are you from? I see some coming in right now. So that's the first question. Second question is, which are you more interested in? Web, iOS? You know, I know a lot of people have dabbled in one or the other, and if you haven't, that's totally fine. We teach both of these disciplines as well as some data science at Make School. And so, you know, if you aren't familiar yet with the technologies, that's totally fine. We're just getting an initial interest. Even if you just have had a couple thoughts like, I might want to do iOS. What is most interesting to you? And then the last community is, what makes you most excited about the Product College? Is it the community of other students, the other makers who will be there? Is it learning new technologies? You really want to improve your skills. That's what excites you most. Or is it connecting with the tech industry? And Jeremy, I think that these 3 things are things that we're going to talk about. Am I correct?
All of them. Well, it's good to see people, we get people coming from all over the country, actually not a majority, or a majority of our students from outside of the Bay Area. And so it's good to see that we have representation from all the best coasts, as well as the best other parts of the country, and a pretty strong focus on back-end web development. So we'll make sure to touch upon that. And I think we have the right person in the room, actually the right alum, to tell you about those courses. The iOS represent, good to see this. Thank you all for contributing. This is helpful in giving us some context to make sure we make this the best session it can be. So Make School is a residential college, and of course, just as we begin, an ambulance goes by. Residential college located in San Francisco, California. We have our main instructional site at 11th and Mission Street, and we have dorms about a 15-minute walk away. So one of the first things that I want to make sure our audience really appreciates is that it is a college experience. Students come to Make School to live with a community of like-minded peers. They attend physical classes every day, where we have a full team of faculty teaching technical and non-technical courses. We have clubs. We have residential life. And to some degree, because we are in one of the fastest developing cities in San Francisco, with the fastest growing industry in the world, the city acts as an extension of our campus, and our students are not only going to Make School events, but actually more often participating in the local tech scene as an extension of their student life at Make School. So a lot of folks, think of us as, we're in Silicon Valley, we're doing programming education, is it online? And the answer is no. We use technology day in, day out to augment the student experience, and a lot of our materials are hosted online, but this is a residential college that students come to for 2 years to study computer science and software engineering. The primary focuses of study we have available for students are mobile development or web development, but we have additional specializations in areas of study. We cover foundational mathematics and computer science theory that is mandatory for all students to take. We offer back-end development and front-end web development courses. Students who take even our mobile courses will dabble in courses in back-end development. And in mobile, we have a strong focus in iOS, but also offer courses in React Native, so students have the opportunity to do some cross-platform development as well. In addition to all of that, CS theory, foundational, and then specific technologies that we cover, we do have a core curriculum that covers a variety of professional skills that are really important to learn and sort of internalize as you prepare for your career in software engineering. We use the same tools and technologies, the same processes as actual companies do in their engineering teams. And so what our software engineering and core curriculum looks like is a mixture of communication skills, entrepreneurial skills, and a lot of the stuff they don't teach in college elsewhere. How do you use version control? How do you coordinate with your team and use effective task management? How do you plan a project with a team of 4 effectively and collaborate in the same ways that a professional team would? And the goal here is to have students enter the workforce and feel like they were adequately prepared for the top industry jobs in the Silicon Valley. We are placing students into some of the top companies out here, including the Googles and the Facebooks and Tesla and others, as well as a variety of awesome startups. From small to large sizes, and in all cases, our goal is really to prepare students for those top jobs and make them feel like when they get in there, they were really ready. That involves a whole lot of a well-rounded education as well as a really deep education in computer science and software engineering. So that is the high-level introduction to the program, and what I want to let Dan expand on here is a little bit more about what the DNA of the school is, and in particular how our financial model impacts the way that the school is run. It's important to note that most students choose not to pay tuition up front and instead to pay us a percentage of their salary only after and if they're employed. And what that means is our students are not going into debt, they don't carry student loans, and if they don't have jobs, they don't have to pay. They are only paying when they earn, and that creates a large incentive for us to do a good job and make sure that all of our students get jobs. So maybe you can talk a little bit more. What does income share do to the culture of the school, and what does it do for students? And then how does the program come together as a result?
Great question. And I could imagine that a lot of people listening to the webinar are thinking, okay, there's Make School, but there's all these other computer science colleges. What are really the cornerstones that make School unique that, of all the choices I might choose it? So like Jeremy mentioned, there's the income share agreement, meaning that you pay percentage of your salary back to Make School as tuition instead of paying up front. That's one of the options, or you could pay up front. And this allows us, from a very structural perspective, to achieve some pretty amazing things, where a lot of other colleges are focused on, theory and really doing some
academia research, oftentimes.
Academia research, exactly. Because we have the income share agreement model, we have to stay aligned to what the industry needs in order to place students in jobs and get paid. So instead of just having students come in, learn, go out, kind of go on their own to find jobs, we have to make sure that we're teaching what the industry wants.
You only make money if you make money, is basically.
And what that means is that we have to adapt. We have to stay up to date on industry trends. So if there's a new framework or a new language that's getting popular and there's now tons of job openings, we need to respond or else our students won't get jobs.
And we also have to be collecting feedback every week. One of the things that you should know about Make School is that I started it out of a frustration with my own college experience. I was at MIT, and there was nobody whose job it was to feel pain or be upset if lecture sucked, if a class sucked, if a class was not relevant. And that was unacceptable. College in the United States these days is so expensive that it can't be the case that there is literally nobody's job to care if undergrads are not being served well. And so at Make School, one of the things that was really powerful about the income share agreement is it creates a culture within our school where we all care deeply. It is everyone's job, and indeed actually some specific people's job, to collect feedback from students literally every couple of weeks. And if someone says that a course is not running the way it should, or the material is not being delivered the way it should, or the instructor is not engaging, or whatever it is, we are aware and we care. And the income share agreement has a really positive impact on the culture of the school because it forces us to care. If we don't, we will go out of business. And so we care because the culture of the school was set by folks who care deeply about education. And we also care because it relates to our bottom line. And both of those things keep us really really accountable.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us some more about, those industry ties and like, how do we stay integrated with industry? What does that really mean? And I think that's another edge we have compared to traditional colleges. We're we're walking distance from some of the largest technology companies in the world.
Uber's 1 block away.
Twitter is 1 block away. Airbnb is not far. Lyft is not far. And our students work at some of these companies. So how do we stay integrated? What does that really mean to be an industry-tied school?
Yeah, and David, I see your question that you 100% agree with constant feedback. Awesome to hear that. Yeah. It seems like we're aligned, just like Make School's trying to align with industry. And that's a great question because there's a lot of blogs you can read about what's needed in the tech industry, but we kind of like to get it straight from the horse's mouth to kind of use an idiom, where we have partnerships, signed documents and agreements with companies. You can visit them all on the site, see all the
Makeschool.com/partners, I think.
Yes,
that's all. Yeah.
Lyft, LinkedIn, I believe Facebook might have signed, or they're in the
Facebook
process.
signed.
We did a field trip there.
Yeah, Facebook's a partner.
Where we say, okay, partners, can we share with you our curriculum and get your feedback so you can say if there's anything we're missing or if anything has changed. Sometimes we'll share the same curriculum with the same partner just to see how the industry has changed.
Yeah, very much so.
And this is just one part of what I would call a comprehensive job outcomes plan that Make School offers. Because unlike a lot of universities where you go and you're kind of in a campus kind of far away, like Jeremy mentioned, we're in the thick of everything. So we have a lot of mentors coming into the building so that, as you're taking classes, you can ask how some of these things that you're learning apply in their job setting.
So I remember one that I was really excited for. We had some data science and machine learning folks from Netflix come over to give a talk on how they do the recommendation engine at Netflix. And, this wasn't, watching about this stuff on YouTube. This was Make School students got to sit in a room with these experts for quite an extended period of time, hear a structured presentation, do Q&A. And for our students who are taking data science courses, that was like really awesome to be able to interface directly with folks who are doing that in industry. We had folks come from Pixar. We went to go visit Facebook and had a talk from their team. We had to visit a Tesla, and one of our alums works there, so that was super cool to check in with one of our alums. And we're saying the flashy company names here, but there's also some companies you may not have heard of that we deeply respect. Their engineering teams are super cool. Or the company's mission is super cool, and you'll get to know those companies as you come here. Their founders come in, or their engineers come in, or they mentor, or we go and visit their offices. And I'd say that happens on basically a monthly cadence. Like whether it's them coming into our space, giving a talk here, or mentoring our students, or us going to visit their space. Basically every month of the program. And actually on that whiteboard just moments ago was the whole plan for next year. But I was seeing, most months, multiple times a month, there's sort of direct industry engagement, and then behind the scenes, that feedback on the curriculum. So we take it very seriously when we say that we want to be deeply integrated with industry, and we work really hard to create opportunities during the course of the program. It's not just like, hey, it's May, go visit your college career center and figure out what's going on with your life. Within the first couple months of the program, you'll have met a lot of folks who work in industry, and a lot of our faculty actually have held industry jobs and were selected for precisely that reason. You teach courses in the program that are non-technical, and if you think about your background, maybe it's worth mentioning kind of you've run growth at companies, you've started running companies, and so you bring that experience into the classroom for our students, and that's a big part of it as well. So it's kind of integrated through and through, and I think very distinctive. When students come here, we get a lot of students who are at other colleges that transfer into Make School. And they will attest to the fact that it's really different from a traditional higher education, all the while being a very comprehensive higher education.
Exactly, and so that's kind of the overarching, I'd say almost the secret sauce about how we make sure that everything's high quality. The second thing that I'd say is really unique about Make School is our project-based learning. So I don't know about you, but I know Jeremy and I. We're very interested in, not just taking tests, but actually building things. And one of the things that's so inspiring about being a software engineer or, getting into this profession is that you can create something that affects not only a dozen people,
kind of why I dropped out of college. To be honest. Yeah, tests were not my jam, to be perfectly clear. And assessments are good. It's good to have structured assessments sometimes, but we're all in on project-based. And so it'd be interesting to hear, does that mean we assign projects always? Do students get to work on independent projects? When Do the projects come up?
Yeah, so we have a core component of the curriculum is our software product development class, where you're learning some of the leading practices in creating products, but there's also room for people to come up with their own ideas. And we use a lot of creative methods of user interviewing and understanding an industry in order to come up with these ideas. So, if you are someone who has, 10 ideas that you're struggling to choose between, or if you're like, oh, well, I don't really have any ideas, like everybody can fit. And what's great is that there's a lot of collaboration on these ideas. So as you're doing the products, you're building them, you're shipping them, maybe showing them to some users, getting actual live users. You're mimicking exactly what happens in industry. So we've seen a lot of people graduate from the program and start working at a company, and they almost don't need the onboarding because they've been onboarded with Make School's curriculum leading in. We've had some students create some projects to help people monitor their health. One was to help people sign up for food stamps online. And so these are things that, if you care about things, or you want to explore topics that you care about, it's amazing to do that, in a school environment where there's a rich community like the other companies, that you can kind of get your feet wet early in your career.
And so what this means is, projects, and whether it's small projects that you hack on or large projects that you work on and try to launch for real, these are not things you do on the side or on the weekend at hackathons. This is integrated into the curriculum. So that's, in essence, what the spirit of the school is about. It's about learning how to build software that makes a real impact. That means building products that solve real problems. That means understanding how to sequence the development of those products, how to use the technologies you need, and having all that come together to actually launch something. And so every year we organize multiple events where students actually get to demo the projects that they launch. And we have a very strong view that the portfolio is essentially the new resume. With a strong portfolio, you could basically not have a resume. And on that portfolio alone, you will probably get an interview at a software company. Nowadays, people kind of go to your personal website, they go to your GitHub page, and if they see that you've launched projects that are credibly, real projects that use the technologies that they care about at that company, that's what you need to get your foot in the door. And frankly, when we think about how students got jobs at so many awesome companies after Make School, I'd love to say that it was all our deep relationships with these companies. And part of that is true. Like, we made referrals, we made introductions, but
we can get the foot in the door, but you have to walk through.
Yeah, and what opens that door in almost all cases is the strength of our student portfolios. And when you compare a student at Make School to a student coming out of a traditional CS program, like when I think of my peers at MIT, one of the biggest differentiators is the strength of that portfolio, and that's evidence of a lot of a different kind of learning than you could find in a traditional college. So in many classes, you'll spend part of the class learning the tools and technologies by working on projects that we assign, where we'll create a spec and we'll say, hey, this is what you have to build. But many times you also are given the opportunity to put your own independent ideas into practice. And students at Make School own 100% of the code that they write. So it's not our business model to take ownership over your IP. It's our business model to teach you how to build world-changing products and then leverage that into getting an awesome job, or maybe eventually, starting an awesome company.
So we have the income share agreement, keeping us aligned with what industry and people need. We have the project-based learning that makes it very integrated and sets you up well in terms of skills. Then the third thing that I would argue is probably the most important is our community. Something we take very seriously is creating an inclusive environment for anyone. It doesn't matter your skill level, it doesn't matter your background, your social identity. We are incredibly focused on creating a place where everyone can thrive. And part of this comes in the student culture we have. We have Megan, who's a phenomenal student culture lead. It's funny, like when I think about my experiences at Make School, I think of like laughter erupting in the corner of the office, and I think about people having really passionate debates. And it's amazing thinking about how strong of a student body we create. And a lot of that comes from instructors who are really knowledgeable and really smart. Adam Brous has started a couple companies, and he ran his own contracting firm and actually sold a company for a couple $100,000. We have Eliel, who's an incredible instructor who has had an app that launched on the App Store, was featured, and kind of ran the whole stack for—
like featured by Apple.
Featured by Apple. Big deal. Alan has interviewed, I think it's almost over 100 engineers.
He was, Twilio and then Leap Motion, which are two very, deep tech companies in certain ways. Twilio on the infrastructure side, Leap Motion on the computer vision side. He has a master's and is both deeply theoretical and deeply practical. And so he teaches our CS theory courses, but also was a real software engineer in industry for many years and interviewing a lot of engineers. And so he does our interview prep as well. He's amazing. I think the whole team, I mean, and we're actually hiring some more instructors for this next year, and the candidates we have in the pipeline are just so exciting.
Yeah.
We'll update you on that when the hires are made.
What's great is that, you know, this is the inclusive environment has been part of Make School's DNA from day one. And I know that one of our investors is actually does a lot of the leading research in diversity in tech and has commitments, I believe, that the founders and people make to make sure that they have a certain percentage of diversity in the class, which is not just, you know, a number, but we really believe that it creates the richest type of learning environment where people can bring different perspectives.
I'll tell you one thing. We have almost unheard of demographics in an academic program that targets computer science. We both get the students who are traditionally academically successful. We get students who, you know, ace their SATs and have perfect grades and could go to any college they want, and they pick us because we are very much aligned with what they want to do, and they see us as the better option. We got also a lot of students who've taken non-traditional paths, and a lot of students from family backgrounds that don't typically end up in tech, be that for socioeconomic or other reasons. And you know, when you think about our financial model, one of the interesting things that results is that by far our students come from less wealthy family backgrounds than at typical top schools. So we're actually averaging on par or better salaries on first job. Our current average is between $95,000 and $100,000 on first job. That's basically on par with Ivy League schools. And we have something, depending on the school, between 5 to 10x the number of students who come from low-income backgrounds and are then using Make School as a launchpad into a really high-earning career. So creating an environment that accommodates that diversity of people is not something we just pay lip service to. It's something you can see in our student body. And when you're here, you realize the kinds of people who are here learning how to become software engineers who will get these awesome jobs are not the kinds of people that are currently the average software engineer. And that is really interesting to see. I also wanted to say for folks who just joined, David, I see that you asked a question in the chat. I'll answer it. Be good to re-ask it in the Q&A just so we have a record of it, because the chat doesn't get saved afterwards, but the Q&A does. Helps us just keep track of questions that were asked and make sure we answer them in writing afterwards also. Maybe it's time to answer some of these questions.
That sounds great, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I'll start with a couple of questions that I feel like I got great answers to, and I think then you'll have some you want to answer, and then Sarah, your last question actually we'll answer later. Komal, who does enrollment advising, will tell you a bit more about admissions. So David asks, why are we 2 years long when everyone else is months? I would say we are 2 years long when everyone else is 4 years long. The comparable experience to Make School is really an undergraduate experience and not a 3-month boot camp. If you look at the average audience in a 3-month boot camp, by far, and I'm friends with the founders of almost all the top ones. Like I had the founders of Hack Reactor and App Academy and Dev Bootcamp over for dinner at my place, you know, just a few months ago. So you know, these are not companies that are like an abstract concept. Like I know them very well and we hang out. And they're great. I love these programs. The average age of the student in these programs is almost a decade older than the average age of a student at Make School. Coming to Make School means you're going to go to college for computer science, software engineering. You're going to go to the best college if you want to be a software engineer in tech. You want to learn the theoretical and foundational fundamentals as well as the practical knowledge you need to excel. And you're not trying to do it the fastest possible to just get that minimum first job. You're trying to do it comprehensively so you can get a top tier job that is going to grow over the course of your career. Not only that, but you're unlikely to already have a degree, though that's not unheard of. We actually have plenty of folks who already have degrees when they come to Make School, but they're not the majority. Whereas at boot camps, 3-month-long programs, the majority of their audience are folks who have done already a bachelor's program, have already worked for a few years, and then are coming back to kind of transition careers. And so when you think about whether we are a good fit for you as opposed to a 3-month program, I would ask questions like, have you gone to college before? Have you taken some of these foundational communication classes before? Do you have solid fundamentals? Have you worked before? And if you are somebody who has a 4-year bachelor's and you've worked several years in industry, and then you want to get the fastest path to an entry-level software engineering job, a 3-month bootcamp is probably a good move. If you want to dive deep and you want to get a top tier job that is available to a new grad out of a top college, then that's what we are more about. Students have literally transferred out of MIT to come to make school. And so psychologically, when you think about where we're positioned and what's right for you, you have to be thinking that make school means you're going to college and that you're going to live that dorm life and you're going to take a variety of different courses that are all going to build on themselves to set you up for an awesome career. And we do so much more content-wise and rigor-wise than a boot camp possibly can, not because we're better than all of them, but because they don't have time. They do the shortest path to that entry-level job, and that's not what we do. In terms of tuition question, great question, Roham. The tuition for the total 2-year program is now $70,000. That's $40,000 for your first year and $30,000 for your second year. And if you were to take an income share agreement to pay that off instead, you would end up paying 20% of your income for 5 years. So a minority of our students, but still some, choose to pay cash up front. And most of our students choose to take the income share financing option. If you leave early, that is prorated. So that's the 5 years, 20%. That's the figure for the full 2-year program if you were to stay. And if you were to do the full 2-year program, that's $70,000 is the full tuition. And Sarah, our job placement rates and what is success for our students. Ultimately, success is if a student is happy. That's really the most important thing, because we can't really claim victory if a student has a job that is high paying, but they're not happy. And we all are close enough to our students that we just don't allow ourselves to count that as success. And it's also not our place to tell students that they are not successful if they're doing things that make them happy. We have students who've decided to go back to school and go elsewhere. Like I was just catching up with a student of ours who decided that actually he doesn't want to be a software engineer. He wants to be a researcher, and he's doing his PhD at Carnegie Mellon instead. Good for him. That's great. And we're really happy for him. But on average, success for us looks like employment full-time at a technology company in a software engineering role. That's the default average definition of success. And the salaries that we see being reasonable are between the $80,000 to $120,000 range typically, where on the lower end, you'll see companies that are more, are newer or haven't gotten funding yet, or maybe the role is not a full software engineering role. Maybe it's a more of a quality assurance role, that kind of thing. Those are less common. More common students will get on the lower end because the company is smaller and not yet funded. On the higher end, that'll be more often from companies that have a lot of funding or are more established. Think the Facebooks, the Googles, and so on and so forth of the world. And then a lot of our students end up somewhere in between. Our full placement rates are actually posted on our website. And so, Komal, if you could pull up the URL and then we'll post it in the chat. We have it. So I'll just post the URL in the chat, and then after this, instead of me trying to relay it verbally, you should just go through the full table. We have kind of the first year, the second year, the third year of the program, who got jobs, who didn't. This information is always in flux. Whatever is on our website is probably slightly worse than the reality, because basically every week that goes by, people get jobs, and we don't update it every single week. But it gives you a good sense of what to expect from the program. The short answer is, of the older classes where all the students have had 2 years past since they've started, we've had upwards of 90% of placement. And then in the more recent classes, some students are still studying in the second, going into the second year next year, or some of them are still job seeking, and all that data is posted. I'll let Dan answer the question about a typical day, but I'll get quickly to your question about dropping out. About 10% of students who start at Make School do drop out, and the majority, but not all, are asked to leave. But there are definitely double-digit % of the dropouts choose to leave because it wasn't a good fit for them. That used to happen more than it does today. So 2-3 years ago, we had more students coming to the program who hadn't validated as much that they really wanted to be software engineers. And so now we're more clear about that in the application process, and really asking students about their goals and making sure that it's a good fit. And so that dropout rate has actually gone down significantly. It may be below 10% the latest year actually, but that's what it was on average over the past couple of years. So it's not that significant of a number these days.
And I'd say if someone's struggling academically to do well in class, it's not like they're on their own.
No.
Usually
no.
if we notice someone's falling behind, we'll schedule a meeting with them, kind of sign them up for extra office hours, have some additional check-ins beyond what a typical student gets, because we don't want anyone to drop out. And
no, it's never a happy outcome for us unless it's the right thing for the student and they're happy, right? The student who dropped out to go do a PhD at Carnegie Mellon, like, great, we're over the moon. So is he. Everyone's happy about that. The student who really wanted it to work out and couldn't make it work, that's not happy for us. We really try hard to keep those students around the best we can, and really support them as much as we can.
I'd say a typical day.
Typical day.
So,
go for it.
Typical day. You can think about Make School there.
That's actually a good segue to getting Tassos introduced.
Yes,
I think. We'll answer
Tassos
their questions,
is our alumni.
and then we'll introduce the alum. We'll tell you more about the typical day.
Yes. So the typical day, you can imagine. Would you like to share, Tassos?
Sure.
Sure. You wanna
Yeah, Tassos.
play musical chairs? All right. So here, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Am I relieved of my duties? I'll be back. I'll be back to say goodbye in a bit.
Yes.
But Tassos, I think this one is for you. What's a typical day like? So Tassos, he's just finished his 2 years, started his new job just a few weeks ago. He'll introduce himself more fully. I can say with confidence that he's one of the students that really has been a pleasure to teach. And a perfect example of what happens when you follow through with the entirety of the content and the curriculum, really apply yourself, and he's gotten a job at a wonderful company. And I also, before signing off, want to say that the referral to that job actually came from a former instructor of ours. So we have people who have taught at Make School in the past who've been rotated back into industry. And this is actually a very happy thing for us. We're not sad when our instructors leave to go take software engineering jobs. They just become a really strong industry contact. And so what is his title now? He's like leading engineering in one of the divisions now. He's pretty high up there.
I'm a lead software engineer for marketing.
And Benji's? What's Benji's title?
Oh, Benji? Yeah, he's I don't even know his actual title.
He's high up there.
He's second highest tier.
Second highest tier of engineer. And so that's an example of our community and our alumni network. It's not just the alums on the student side, but also people who used to work at Make School who stay in touch and now help us from their positions in new companies. So that's kind of a cool factoid about how Tassos landed in his current job. Let's have you take my seat.
Let's give it up for Tassos. Hey, you want to take a seat?
Awesome.
Tassos, thank you for joining. I'm happy you got some time off work to chat. So
hey, everybody.
So could you tell us a bit about what a typical day is like at Make School?
Yeah.
And I think specifically focusing on the difference between the core classes, which we're now kind of renaming software product development classes, kind of like the product class you took that, and then the track classes, as well as coaching.
The good old days. No, yeah. A typical day at Make School. So this is actually 2.5 weeks ago that I finished my last day. So I would say typical day is, we sort of get in at 9:30. We do our stand-ups, our all hands and on Mondays, which basically is just people, kind of just the way it would be in a tech company. You're giving sort of a stand-up update of what you're doing and what progress you're making. After that, everybody usually either goes to sort of like, I guess what would be considered like a study hall in traditional, like maybe high school or something, where we just are sort of coding and working on our projects. Usually we, this past year at least, the schedule was, we did that early in the morning because people could just be kind of in a productive state early on. And after that, it's just, we would do like technical classes. We'd also have core sessions, which are sort of life skills and other aspects that you won't be getting in a traditional 4-year degree. And 2 technical classes that would happen, twice throughout the week, maybe sometimes 3 times depending on the class. And then there's also like a product class, I guess, which I guess you said you're renaming. But yeah, the product class is sort of getting to work with your peers and really building an amazing, something remarkable with your peers, which is really the most exciting part, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we kind of jumped in with that question, but I'd love to kind of back up and give maybe a little bit more of an introduction. So can you tell us your name, where you work, when you graduated, and what your spirit animal is, most importantly?
Yes, of course. So my name is Tassos Lambrou. I work at a company called PlanGrid. We make construction software, sort of one of the newest players in that game. And I am a software engineer working mostly on the marketing side. And I'm a lead software engineer on that team. So I'm actually the first engineer on their team. And my spirit animal, I would have to go with the Velociraptor.
Wow, a blast from the past. Terrific. So Mr. Velociraptor, what are 2 ways that Make School has changed your life, your career? What would you say are like the 2 biggest?
Yeah, I mean, Make School has definitely changed my life in a lot of amazing ways. I would say probably the biggest transformation for me has been sort of turning my internal, what I thought were sort of weaknesses, into superpowers. A lot of things that I think I always believe were to my detriment, actually wound up translating into, sort of an advantage in being able to move,
Could you give an example?
Yeah, so being impatient with not understanding the answer is actually like my thirst for knowledge, right? So being able to sort of sit through that and realize, actually, in tech, that's always the case. There's always gonna be more complexity than you can deal with. And that was just sort of, or playing video games forever. When I was playing like strategy video games, I would play far too much. It was really just wanting to solve puzzles, and coding is very much solving puzzles. So those things were like, applied to something that actually can benefit me rather than, and far better anyway. So I would say that's probably the biggest one. And in terms of my career and potential, obviously it's the options for me now are just like way. I mean, I couldn't even compare them to prior to coming to Make School for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's take it back before you started Make School. What were some of your biggest concerns coming, and kind of what was your process like working through them? How did you overcome them?
Yeah, biggest concerns at Make School. So my biggest concern at first was like, is it the real deal? Because it was like, I didn't really know. I don't know if there was some gotcha or sort of a pound of flesh somewhere that was like, is this a problem? And I think just meeting with Browse and meeting with you guys, just coming here and actually seeing the whole operation.
Browse is one of the instructors.
Yeah, Browse was director and instructor here at Make School, and he showed me everything, and I realized like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. I'd be really stupid not to come. So yeah, I think it was just seeing it for myself. Those were the
cool.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to someone who's considering the program?
In terms of advice, I would say, I mean, there's obviously a lot of pieces I already mentioned. I'd say just go with what they've got here. A lot of people, I heard the question about why not a 3-month program. I think a lot of students like to go even 1 year. I did both years here at Make School, and for sure, of the students who finished the second year, I mean, that's like, it's a rare opportunity to get the chance to learn and to grow. And I think you should be patient with it and go with it. The second year has been both super lucrative for me and super just beneficial in every respect. So yeah, I think these guys know what they're talking about. So just, listen to them and follow the flow.
With the questioning here, I'm enjoying these questions. Still keep asking questions. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
I can answer some questions, and maybe if you want to chime in later. So one of the questions that Sarah asked is, what happens if students don't show up to class regularly? And I think that what I preempt my answer to this question with is that every student gets paired with a coach. This is someone who's an instructor or works on our student experience team to basically consult whatever things you're going through, and also sometimes give code reviews. And so coaching has been proven to improve a lot of work performance. And it also gives us a way to support students with any challenges that they have. So, if students aren't showing up to class regularly because they're struggling with something, the coaching kind of helps nip that in the bud. And then, challenges get escalated to the coach. So, if you're missing class because there's an excused absence, that's legitimate, then, there, of course, can reschedule opportunities to take things. But generally, we do require everybody to come to classes. It's really critical because a lot of our class sessions are active learning. So it's not just listening to a lecture. It's very hands-on. It's very project-based. And so, if you miss too many sessions, there's a chance that you might need to retake the class, especially if you're not performing well. But, if there's any challenges or, people are falling behind or whatever, we always try to accommodate. So it's never just like a black and white of communication. We have like a very tight-knit feedback loop between students and staff. And so we try to support people before issues arise. Great. Any other thoughts? Or I think that's good. Does anyone have any questions for Tassos? Let's leave some time. If you could put that into the question pane, Q&A right at the bottom of your screen. We can try to answer those. I guess we're good.
Cool.
Maybe mentioning Velociraptor scared some people off.
It's too old of a meme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Tassos.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. So now, so you want to say something?
I just realized something. In asking the question about whether you show up to class or not and what a typical day is like, we should probably tie all that together by mentioning that you try to simulate a work environment to a certain degree. That means that unlike college where, you could have like half the day go by and then after that you have a class to go to and so you like have to leave your dorm to go to class. We create a culture, an expectation, an academic calendar that basically has you leaving for work, but it's make school every morning, getting here kind of at the same time as the other students, meeting with your coach in a group, doing a morning stand-up like companies actually do where you talk about what you set out to accomplish the day before, what you did accomplish, what you want to accomplish today, what's blocking you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And then you're at make school during the day. And so, going to class is not necessarily as active of a decision as it might be in college where it's like 2 p.m. and it's your first class of the day. Because we generally expect students are going to be here from 10 a.m. to late afternoon, depending on their calendar. And that creates, I think, a different culture and mentality that's actually really good for students to get in the habit of because that's how the workplace works. And then in terms of facilities, Sarah, great question. We're actually exploring a move to a new location, but we can definitely follow up with some photos of the existing location for you to see. I think that's a totally fair question. We should get like a little photo album out or something.
And one thing that we can say, I believe there are some shots online, and of course, if you go on social media, you can see some images from class. But there's, you can imagine the components that will stay the same is everything's in one building. There's multiple classrooms, 4 or 5. There's a common space for people to, talk and be more active, and then there's also a quiet workspace as well as meeting rooms because it is a project-based school.
We're actually in one of them right now.
we're in one of them right now. Is
it worth it to move this?
Yeah, let's go. So and we are moving to a bigger building, but you can imagine. Here's one of the meeting rooms. Then here's
the Great Hall, as we call it. So this is kind of like the co-working space that students hang out at in between classes. Where they work on their projects. This is one of the several rooms we have. It is after hours, so it is empty, but during a typical day, it would be filled with people coding and also coaches and mentors, helping folks on their projects. There's classrooms downstairs and other classrooms next door, but this gives you a sense of what the general facilities are like. So let's introduce Komal. Komal is our enrollment advisor. So she's going to talk to you about what to expect in the admissions process, what do we look for. Rohan's question, I think, is a good question for you to field as well, Komal. And then we also skipped, I think, a couple questions above that may be good for you to answer. Yeah. What are we looking for, and so on and so on and so forth. So I'll leave it to Komal.
Before we begin, I want to follow up on what we were talking about earlier with outcomes. And so I just want to, where can I post the?
It was posted. I think you actually posted
it. Okay, great. So we've got it covered. So yeah, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. I am the enrollment advisor at Make School, and what that means is I help students admits specifically go from getting admitted to what it means to enroll and actually come to the program. So I'm the person that answers.
She just posted.
Great. And so, yeah, I'm the person that answers all of those questions and that students have before coming here and makes sure that people can sign their ISAs and things like that. So that's kind of my role here. But today I want to talk a little bit about admissions. So I don't know, I think I'll let you lead the way.
Yeah, I'd love to. So admissions, of course, you know, applying to make school, hearing back, seeing if we're a mutual fit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear, what is make school's overall philosophy in admissions? What is admissions trying to do and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, for us, I think the running theme at Make School is very much a students first mentality. So we're really trying to figure out whether we are a good fit for you. And so in that end, you know, for us, admissions isn't about looking at, you know, and judging whether your skills are good enough and, you know, whether you make that mark, that kind of thing. We're not really that interested in that. We're trying to coach you essentially and figure out, you know, what are your experiences? How excited are you about computer science? And trying to really dig deep and figure that out. For us, you know, the most important thing is having that enthusiasm for computer science and, you know, making sure that you know that you want to be a software engineer. And so, you know, I want to mention that this isn't a program that's only for students that have prior CS experience. We actually have a program before you attend the product college that would allow you to really ramp up your skills. And, you know, we've had students that go from zero experience to being ready for the product college in as little as 4 weeks.
And how does one access that program? How's that?
So essentially, you know, you put in your application and we kind of assess it and we see where you're at and we have a conversation with you and we assess that, you know, this would be a good thing for you to be able to ramp up and we know that you're really into computer science and you really want to be a software engineer. And, you know, we think that you would fit at Make School. So then we would essentially recommend you for that program and you go through it. It's an online self-paced program and we get a sense of also, in addition to being able to have you upskill with computer science, we also get a chance to see how you self-motivate. And so that's an important thing for us because one of the things that, you know, we think about, we want to be students first and all those things, but we also really expect a lot from our students. We want you to work really hard. It's a rigorous program. It's a 4-year college in 2 years. And so, you know, those are kind of some of the things that we're looking for. So essentially, you know, in order for us to start the process, we look at the written application first. And in that, we try to look at what all of your previous experience has been. And that can be things that are not CS related, and it doesn't even have to be classroom related. It can be like clubs that you started. If you've done dance your entire life, you know, things like that.
So I'm saying this kind of relates to Sarah's question. What does the application look like? Do I submit projects I've worked on before, or do you assess applicants in different ways? So could you tell us a little bit about submitting the application?
Absolutely. So essentially,
of course, the application's on the Make School website.
Yes, so you can find it at makeschool.com/apply, and essentially we kind of look at a holistic view of who you are as a student and as a person. And so there are places where if you've done projects before, you can submit that, or, you know, if you've done things that are not necessarily computer science related, you can also explain that. So all of those things you can upload to the application, and there are places where you'll be able to really explain what your experience has been. And we do, you know, each applicant for us is different, so we look at the entirety of what your experience and your skills have been, and really it's more of a conversation that we have with you to try to figure out, you know, whether Make School is going to be the right fit.
Great.
Yeah.
And then after I apply to Make School, what should my expectations be? What do I wait? Do I hear from anyone? What kind of happens after that?
Sure. So, you know, if we see that, you know, I want to mention one other thing that I think is really important, and I think it underscores kind of our the importance of community for us. We're very big on collaboration and teamwork and empathy, and a lot of your classes actually help build that for our students. You know, kindness is a big thing for us. Being inclusive is really, really big part of who we are. And so, you know, if we can see that through your application and through the conversations that we have, it's a really big for us. And so, you know, if we read your application, we like what it looks like, the next step will actually be an interview with an admissions officer. It's going to be an hour long over the phone, and essentially there's a bunch of questions that we prepare that supplement what the application is. And that's a real chance for us to, you know, get on the phone and hear from you who you are really. And then the one thing that I do want to mention is that if you have any major questions, that you ask those questions either via email before the interview happens or at the beginning of that interview. So yeah, that's kind of like our overarching, the overarching idea behind the admissions process for us.
Now that interview, is that technical? Is that like a coding interview, or what is it?
So it won't be a technical interview. You might get asked some questions about your technical experience, but it's not going to be, we're not going to be testing you on, there's no coding problems or anything like that. We might try to get a sense of where you are at technically, but then, you know, if after that assessment happens and that conversation happens, you know, if you are a beginner, for example, then you would go to ramp or things like that. Really, we try to make the interview a chance for us to understand whether, you know, you have all of those, some of those other traits that we look for, whether you would be a good fit with our community, essentially.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
let's see if we can answer some of the other questions.
I think that might be it for the
I think there was one that Jeremy said that Sarah had asked before.
What do students need to know before coming? Are there prerequisites, and what do you think makes a successful Make School student?
So again, you know, for us, you can be a beginner, and that program that kind of ramps up your skills will take care of any prerequisites that you do need, and we'll make sure that you're ready for the product college. So I don't think that's something to really worry about. But I think for me, what I've seen in my experience, and I've been here for about 2 years full time, is that I think that students that are incredibly hardworking, incredibly self-motivated, and are really looking to push themselves to the very most that they can, those are the ones that are the most successful, and they end up coming out of the program with, you know, 120K, 130K salaries.
It's not necessarily the people who have the most experience coming in.
No, absolutely not. It's really about putting in that work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when is there a deadline, or when should people apply?
So we do have a deadline coming up, and it is on June 29th. And this deadline is to guarantee dorm housing, because spots do fill up, and we need to make sure that, you know, we've got everything ready for you. So that is the deadline. And the other thing that you get if you do apply by June 29th is an opportunity to get reimbursed for our preview weekend, which is coming up in mid-July, and it's really a chance for admits to meet each other, get a sense of what the space is like, meet the instructors, and so, you know, if you apply and are admitted by that date, so that means you go through your interview and all those things, you will get a chance to actually come here for free, and we're going to have housing and things like that. So those are the two things that are going to be crucial for that deadline. So June 29th, that's the thing to be applying by. That's the date.
Great. Any other questions about from an admissions perspective? Feel free to put some in now. Any more questions? Let's scroll to the bottom. We've got most of them. Or any questions in general? We're kind of headed towards
here's one. Okay, so how often do people work at a company and attend Make School at the same time? So we don't recommend students work and do Make School, and the main reason being is that Make School is difficult. It's a full-time thing, and in order for you to really be successful and gain the most out of the program, you want to really put all of your effort into doing that. And so the students that we've seen that have worked haven't had as good outcomes, and they haven't been able to gain as many skills as they could have had they focused solely on doing their make school work. So
I would say that there's, you know, to get a degree, you need a certain amount of credits. And one thing that's pretty cool that we offer is that we offer a supervised work experience credit, which is basically you can intern and get credit by talking with an advisor, writing some reflections. And, you know, again, it's a 2-year, very, very, very accelerated program, but manageable. You know, it's not too much. But if there's a need to make additional money, it wouldn't be totally out of the blue and weird for someone to take a term off and work and then come back. And so it can be extended, you know, into 2.5 or 3 years, but it financially makes most sense to just get it done quickly. So that's something. Oh, good. We got a bunch of questions coming in now. So is there anywhere we can see pictures of the campus or?
That's a great question. I don't think we have any on the website. The pictures that are on the website are from Make School.
Facebook page.
I think we do have some on our Facebook page, so that's the place to look.
Yeah, maybe Mickey, if you could try to find a link and add, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Have there been any Make School projects that became real startups?
Have there been any Make School projects that have become real startups? So I don't believe so. We've had students who have gone through Make School and then started a startup afterwards. Mohammed Othman and Adrian are actually 2 students who met at Make School. They had done a bunch of projects and afterwards started a company that does kind of machine learning consulting projects and kind of works as that arm for different companies. And they now have, I believe, 14 employees. So they're probably the closest thing to starting a venture at Make School, but it's not through, it hasn't been through a project. But I can say these projects are not, you know, all for naught. It's a lot of the times we encourage people to make a lot of projects because in each one you learn a lot. And it's amazing to see throughout the years how people's projects get better and better and better. And so the learnings that come from the projects really do set you up to create a project that people love and pay for. And you can imagine, you know, if you're going to try to start your first company when you're 25, it's your first rodeo trying to start a project. It's a lot different than having done it 3 or 4 times before and gotten all that learning. Mm-hmm. So, oh, and I see there's some, oh, great. There's some pictures that have just been shown in the link on Instagram of campus. So check out the chat screen and you'll see some pictures there. Great. Thank you for asking. It's helpful.
Yeah.
Are there good questions for students interested in hardware or are there good options for students interested in hardware development? Great question. I'd say we don't offer a formal hardware track. That said, we do have a little hardware lab that students tinker with. Duncan had kind of led our hardware club this past year, and they did a bunch of cool LED displays. And Mitchell, who teaches web, has some experience in hardware. So while I would say that there are opportunities to play with hardware, and of course we have mentors who work in hardware who we're happy to try to build a connection with. But Make School is not a place where you can come and kind of major in hardware per se. Great. Who can stay at the dorms you provide? Do students pay extra to stay at the dorms? Where do students live if they are not in the dorms?
So we encourage all students to live in the dorms, and it is something that you would cover yourself, or we also have an option for living assistance, which actually is its own ISA that's different than the one for tuition, and basically
I say being the income share
agreements. Sorry, yes. And so we essentially will help you pay for it, but it is an additional cost on top of tuition. But anybody can live there. We encourage all students to live there. Because mostly, it's not just the community that happens in this building, but it's also community that happens at night, or, people helping each other as they're coding furiously for their project for demo night, things like that, right? So very crucial to, I think, live in the dorms so that you are continuing to build that community at all times.
Great. Well, we'll allow some time for any last questions as a trickle in, but this has been a lot of fun, and I hope to chat with a lot of you soon, and feel free to send some questions. If people have questions about admissions or things come up, what email should they send? There's a couple more. All right, we'll get to those, but I want to make sure that I let you guys know what my email is. It's komal@makeschool.com, and that's spelled KOMAL @makeschool.com. And then I don't know, do you want to be open, or Jeremy? Yeah. And also if you just do info@makeschool.com.
Yeah, I think hello, or either admissions at Makeschool or
admissions.
Admissions. Yeah, let's stick to admissions at
And
Makeschool.
everything will get forwarded to the best person to answer the question.
Yeah.
You
mentioned that you're moving. Are you looking to expand?
You mentioned you're looking to expand. Yes, actually, which is really exciting, is that the reason why we're moving is that we've outgrown the building. And we're going to have a class that's significantly bigger than this year's class, which is great because there's more community, likely more clubs, and it's still going to be in San Francisco, just a short ride away, short walk away from the current one,
and still walkable from the dorms.
And still walkable from the dorms. Excellent. And then, what do you look for most in candidates coming straight out of high school?
So maybe we can get more context to that question. Are you asking from a technical perspective, or are you asking just in general, Rohan? I don't know if he's there. All right, maybe we can do both. So from a technical perspective, I think we're looking at whether you've taken APCS, if you've done maybe a hackathon, if you've done any online courses or a class at a community college. So that's kind of our benchmarks. We also look at your GitHub if you do have one, and try to take a look at what projects you've done before. From just a general perspective, I think we're looking at really an understanding of what it takes to become a software engineer, in terms of the fact that you're going to have to really work hard in computer science, and that you really know that computer science is for you. So if you haven't taken any of these courses before, that's totally okay, but you need to demonstrate a little bit, where your interest comes from, essentially. Also, if you have a pattern of hard work, that tells us that you are willing to really put what it takes to be able to become a software engineer. So that's what I would say.
Great. Any other questions before we close out? No? Jeremy, you want to say some goodbyes?
Yes. When I was thinking about which features of Makeschool maybe are most unusual, I was reflecting on the questions about people working while they're studying, and I understand that's not an uncommon thing for college students these days. And then the questions about dorms and the cost for the dorms. And I think the Living Assistance Program is something that is worth mentioning. One of the reasons why it's possible for students to come to Makeschool, majority of our students from low-income backgrounds, and not work while studying here, is indeed because our Living Assistance Program pays for the rent in our dorms and gives additional money every month for food, which allows students to focus entirely on their studies. And it's not to say that it's a huge amount of money. It's not to say that it's living large, and it's not to say that there's a lot of privilege that some folks have in their families being able to support them, and life will never be entirely fair. But we do our entire best to support students from all backgrounds in being able to focus 100% of their studies and not have to take work on the side to the extent possible. And so what that means is you know, if you just are trying to get an income share agreement to cover tuition, you'll pay 20% of your salary for 5 years after you start working. And if you don't have a job or you're back in school, you don't have to pay during that time. If you get the living assistance plan, that'll add about 5 to 7% payback for a 10-year period, which will be stacked on top. So you'll basically pay back 25% for the first 5 years instead of 20%. And then you'll pay back a few percentage points a few more years after that. But in return, we disburse $1,500 a month to students during their time studying, and that tends to cover the entirety of their rent costs plus gives them additional money for food. So just wanted to tie that all together because I think that's relatively unique as a feature that we allow students to trade a small percentage of their future income for the ability to really focus 100% of their studies and for the ability to just have their rent covered in our dorms and be able to focus on their work. So just wanted to say that, and I want to thank you all for being here. My name again is Jeremy. I'm one of the founders of the school, and would always love to get in touch with prospective students. And I want to say that coming to Make School requires a certain sense of adventure. We are in the fastest growing economic center of the world right now, building a school that is funneling directly into some of the top companies behind that economic revolution. And we're new and it's exciting and it requires some desire to do something new, but it shouldn't feel like a jump in the void. We've been around for many years now. We have a lot to show for ourselves. And so there is no question that should feel off limits as you consider whether we're the right option for you. I do not want any part of Make School to seem mysterious before you make a decision to apply, or if you've already applied, before you make a decision to attend. And so do not feel bad in trying to get as much information as possible from us. I understand there's a lot to learn about how we operate that is not the same as a bunch of other colleges that have been around for hundreds of years. And that's a good thing, but that also means that that sometimes there's questions you have, and that's okay. We're happy to answer them.
And thank you for those questions, Rohan, Brandon, Sarah. It's made our conversation a lot more rich.
Yes, we really love them. And if you want to send us more questions privately, feel free to email Komal or admissions@makeschool.com, and we'll be in touch. So
excellent.
With that, thank you all for joining, and take care. We'll shoot you all an email with a little recap in a few days, and look forward. I really hope I get a chance to meet some of you this fall during orientation if you choose to attend our school.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.